Every man walks around with one weakness he rarely notices, and for men who are naturally attractive, that weakness cuts deeper than they realize. You're used to eyes turning when you enter a space. You're used to the easy smiles, the lingering glances, the subtle invitations. But for some reason, the women you're genuinely drawn to always seem just beyond reach. They look, then hesitate. They engage, then retreat. You try to approach, yet something in the air feels misaligned. And while you're trying to make sense of that, men who don't look remotely on your level somehow end up with women you once imagined beside you. If that's been bothering you, there's a reason. In fact, there are four. Until those four become clear, you'll keep losing ground to men you thought you were miles ahead of. So stay with me, because the distance between being admired and being selected is tiny, but only if you understand the hidden mechanisms at play. There's an unwritten rule in dating that no one bothers to tell attractive men. A silent principle that decides whether the woman you want leans closer or instinctively creates space. Most men never hear about it. Most don't even sense it's shaping their love life. But once you recognize this pattern, everything, from who you attract to who you keep, starts shifting in ways you didn't expect. And if you want to tap into the side of attraction people rarely talk about, make sure you follow hidden waters so you don't miss the deeper layers coming next. Because what I'm about to share with you flips the entire script on why attention never seems to translate into the connection you actually desire. The first truth is simple: you attract women, just not the ones who stir something real in you. You've seen the pattern long enough to recognize it. Getting noticed is the easy part. You show up, and women register you immediately. Some drift your way, some initiate small talk, some make it obvious they're open to you. On the surface, that sounds like abundance. But in practice, it's more frustrating than fulfilling. The women chasing you rarely align with what your heart or your instincts are actually drawn toward. Instead, you keep ending up in situations that feel convenient rather than meaningful. And convenience, for a man who desires depth, is a silent trap. From where I'm sitting, having watched this play out more times than I can count, it's almost predictable. You're not selecting these women, you're simply agreeing to them. And the moment a man starts accepting instead of choosing, he becomes vulnerable to a connection that feels more like a slow drain than a genuine partnership. When a woman you're lukewarm about approaches first, the energy feels soft and uncomplicated. There's no pressure, no risk. She laughs easily, smooths over your pauses, keeps everything light. She gives you the green light without you needing to exert effort. And for a man who's been praised for his appearance for years, that comfort can feel like chemistry. You start confusing her enthusiasm with real compatibility. And on the nights you're lonely, exhausted, or simply open to something that doesn't demand courage, you let her inch closer. At first it feels harmless. She's present, she's affectionate, she's accessible, and because she walked into your life already invested, you gradually drift into a rhythm that feels almost organic. You convince yourself she's fine, good enough. Maybe attraction grows, maybe standards are overrated, and sometimes, sure, attraction deepens. But more often, what expands isn't desire, it's familiarity. And familiarity has a way of masquerading as connection. But here's the twist most men never anticipate. The moment you internally believe she's more attached to you than you are to her, something inside you loosens. You start responding later. You stop initiating. You underestimate her feelings because you assume she'll always be there. Not out of cruelty, but because you were never emotionally anchored to begin with. And women, especially the ones who approached because they sensed you wouldn't, feel that shift instantly. She feels the imbalance. She picks up on the subtle dismissal. She notices the quiet entitlement of a man who assumes he's the prize simply because she pursued him first. That's when her energy changes. She voices concerns. She points out the imbalance. She warns you that she feels unseen. She tells you she doesn't feel chosen. And she's right. She wasn't. But instead of addressing the real issue, you panic. You swing from complacency to overcompensation. Suddenly you're initiating too often, trying too hard, reshaping yourself to meet her needs. You move from comfort into fear. And fear never amplifies a man's attractiveness. It dissolves it. That's when admiration evaporates. She looks at you and no longer sees the composed, centered man she originally gravitated toward. She sees someone scrambling to keep her attention. And once she senses that shift from desire to insecurity, her attraction erodes. She grows distant. She emotionally exits long before she physically walks away. And when she finally does, you're shattered by the loss of someone you didn't even deeply want in the first place. This is the cycle attractive men fall into more often than anyone else. When you're used to being approached, you never learn the skill of pursuing with intention. You never develop the muscle of choosing based on standards rather than circumstance. You become reactive instead of deliberate. And when your reality doesn't align with your unspoken desires, resentment builds, not toward her, but toward yourself. And in that space, a darker question rises inside you. If I couldn't even maintain a relationship with someone I wasn't fully invested in, how could I ever hold on to the woman I truly want? That question doesn't just sting, it lingers. It hangs in the back of your mind like a quiet shadow, reminding you that your struggle has never been about attraction. It's been about alignment. And that is the wound no one ever sees behind a handsome face. Not the absence of choice, but the absence of direction. Not the lack of women, but the lack of intention. Over time, you've blurred the line between who's available and who's actually compatible, settling so often that you've forgotten how it feels to genuinely desire a woman rather than simply approving the one standing closest. And until you unravel that pattern, the same story will keep unfolding. You'll fall into relationships that never had the foundation to last, not because you're lacking appeal, but because you were never truly present in the connections you agreed to. And that leads you into the second truth. One most good-looking men never realize they're tangled in. He misreads the reactions of beautiful women. There's a subtle shift, one you felt, the moment you move from easy exchanges with women who don't intimidate you to the sudden tension that hits when you finally talk to a woman who truly captivates you. With most women, the interaction flows effortlessly. They meet you with quick smiles, lively responses, and an eagerness that cushions every pause. They make it simple, enjoyable, predictable, and because it feels so natural, you begin believing that's what chemistry should always feel like. But then you speak to a woman who is stunning in that rare way that makes the room recalibrate. The kind of woman who quietly takes up space without trying. The kind who stays in your thoughts longer than the conversation itself. With her, something is different. She's more contained. Her reactions are slower, measured. She doesn't rush to laugh or light up at your comments. She gives you less. She makes you carry more of the moment. And inside your mind, that difference feels like you're losing her, even though you're not. From her perspective, especially as a beautiful woman, what you read as distance is simply evaluation. She's not shutting you out. She's studying you. She wants to see how you handle a dynamic that isn't automatically tilted in your favor. She wants to see whether your confidence comes from who you are or from how easily others respond to you. Women who are truly beautiful live in a world men rarely grasp. Every day, they face approaches from men who want something, men who act timid around them, men who drown them in compliments, men who crumble at the slightest pause. After a while, all of it becomes predictable noise, so they filter, they observe, they test the surface to see if there's anything solid underneath. Imagine it. You walk toward her and she notices you instantly, the face, the posture, the presence, but she still doesn't know you, she doesn't know what you're made of. So at the start, maybe for a minute, maybe for 5, she keeps her responses minimal. A soft smile, but not a revealing one. Brief answers, not unkind, just deliberate. Slower reactions, not from disinterest, but from caution. She wants to see who you are when she isn't automatically making the moment easier for you. And this is where many attractive men fall apart. They're accustomed to being met halfway. They're used to women smoothing the edges of awkwardness, cushioning their ego, softening every conversational step. So when a beautiful woman doesn't offer that same warmth, panic slips in. The overthinking starts. You begin trying too hard, explaining too much, overperforming in a way that betrays your tension. Or worse, you retreat entirely, assuming the silence means the door is already closed. What you don't see is that this small pocket of discomfort is the exact place where real attraction begins. She's not rejecting you. She's rejecting every version of you that relies on comfort to function. What she's really searching for is emotional steadiness, the ability to remain present even when validation isn't handed to you. A woman who has endless options doesn't want someone who collapses under mild resistance. She wants a man who can hold his own in the space between two people without unraveling. Someone who can carry conversation without applause, sit with silence without cracking, and stay centered without her needing to guide him. When you interpret her testing as rejection, you reveal the insecurity she was checking for, a confidence built on external approval rather than genuine self-assurance. That kind of confidence disintegrates the moment pressure hits, and once she senses that fragility, her interest fades, not because you're lacking looks, but because she no longer sees stability in the spaces where it matters most. The truth is, it's not attraction you lack. It's resilience in social tension. And resilience is the currency women of high beauty value above anything physical. When she withdraws slightly, she's not being difficult. She's offering you a moment to reveal your depth. She wants to see if you can navigate uncertainty without losing yourself. Most men can't, and that's exactly why they never end up with the women they truly want. Which brings you into the third truth. He fears breaking the illusion, both the image he holds of himself and the one his circle projects onto him. There's an unspoken pressure that attaches itself to every man who's ever been labeled the attractive one. It doesn't matter who said it, friends, family, women, strangers. Once that label sticks, it becomes a quiet expectation. You start feeling obligated to look like the man who can get any woman at any time, and that expectation slowly becomes a cage. From the outside, it seems flattering. Your friends hype you up, teasing you about how easy dating must be. They assume you're drowning in options, assume women fall into your hands, assume effort isn't required, and eventually, you start accepting those assumptions, not because they're real, but because it's safer than admitting that even you have moments of uncertainty, hesitation, or doubt. And that's exactly why, when the moment arrives to approach a woman you genuinely want, you freeze. Not because she wouldn't give you a chance, not because her beauty intimidates you, but because you're terrified of what might happen if she doesn't react the way everyone assumes she will. One rejection, just one, feels like it would shatter the image you've been carrying for years. An image you never asked for, but one you feel responsible for maintaining. So instead of stepping toward her, you hover on the outskirts, telling yourself you're waiting for the right moment, the right signal, the right excuse, but you're not waiting for clarity. You're waiting for certainty. You're waiting for assurance that nothing will bruise the illusion you've constructed. Approaching her means taking a risk, and risk means exposing the possibility that you might not be as untouchable as people believe. That thought alone is enough to keep your feet glued to the floor. So you linger, watching, hoping, imagining that the two of you will somehow end up in conversation without you having to make the first move. You rely on luck, coincidence, a passing comment from a friend, anything that lets you step into the moment without feeling like you initiated it. Because if you didn't start it, you can't be blamed if it doesn't go anywhere. That's the silent logic running through your mind. And when you're in a group, this fear becomes even more obvious. You and your friends see a woman who captures your attention instantly. She's the one you would approach if confidence were guaranteed. But it's not, so you wait again. And while you're standing there analyzing possibilities, one of your less attractive friends decides to walk up to her. He isn't the most charismatic, he isn't dressed to impress, but he's willing to risk hearing no. He's willing to take the hit if it comes. You're not. So he goes, he breaks the ice, he makes her laugh, he opens the door you were too afraid to touch, and when she responds, when she lets him in, even a little, something inside you sinks. Because you know without anyone telling you that you could have done the same thing. You should have. You had the looks, the presence, the advantage, but you didn't step forward, not because you didn't care, but because you cared too much about protecting your image. Deep down, you weren't trying to get her attention. You were trying to avoid embarrassment, and that is the difference between the man who tries and the man who watches. He's playing to connect. You're playing not to lose. And trying not to lose is the fastest way to guarantee that you never win. With time, this avoidance becomes second nature. You only flirt when the signs are unmistakable. You only approach when you're almost certain she'll say yes. You only enter situations where your ego won't take a hit. And slowly, without noticing, your dating life becomes a narrow hallway filled with women who require no courage to pursue. And because they require no courage, they rarely ignite real desire. This pattern doesn't look destructive on the surface, but it subtly cages your growth. You begin to think the women you actually want are unreachable, not because they are, but because you have become a man who doesn't take the emotional leaps needed to reach them. And here's the truth: most men never say out loud. The illusion you're protecting isn't just for your friends, it's for you. You're shielding an image of yourself because you fear that if you venture out, fully exposed, and fail, it might reveal something you've never dared to confront. Maybe you're not as effortless with women as people assume. Maybe your looks don't guarantee connection. Maybe behind the surface, you're human, flawed, vulnerable. But confidence that collapses the moment it's tested isn't confidence. It's a fragile mask. And masks always crack. Real confidence isn't built when the world bends in your favor. It's forged in the moments when you take the step not knowing how you'll land. The admiration your friends give you won't bring the right woman into your life. The courage to act without leaning on that admiration will, because any confidence borrowed from the opinions of others is temporary, and borrowed confidence has never won the woman you truly desire. That leads into the fourth truth. He leans on online dating, and it traps him. There's a reason so many attractive men feel burnt out by modern dating, even though they appear to have every advantage. On the surface, dating apps seem perfect for a good-looking man. You post a few strong photos, exchange messages, wait for matches to appear, and let things develop on their own. It feels efficient, controlled, safe, almost too safe. And that's exactly the issue. Online dating isn't built to elevate your strengths, it's built to flatten them. The moment you enter a digital arena where thousands of men exist simultaneously, your natural edge dissolves. Women aren't meeting your presence, your warmth, your voice, your energy. They're meeting an image, one that looks nearly identical to countless other attractive men. Your uniqueness disappears the second you swipe. Meanwhile, her experience is worlds apart. You might send a message to a single woman who stands out to you, but she receives hundreds, sometimes thousands, from men who want precisely the same thing. Many of them look great, some better, some worse. But inside her inbox, none of that matters. Everyone becomes a blur of similar compliments and predictable openers. When a woman is bombarded with attention, she stops filtering based on appearance. She filters based on entertainment, ease, validation. She replies when she's bored. She swipes when she wants a dopamine hit. She engages without any plan to meet. And the worst part? You won't know which role you're playing in her world until the connection is already fading. That's the trap. On a dating app, you are never the only one. You're just one of many. And no matter how attractive you are, you can be replaced instantly. Picture the cycle. You match with a woman who seems promising. She responds. The conversation feels alive. There's just enough spark to make you hopeful. And then she vanishes. No explanation, no shift in tone, just silence, leaving you wondering what went wrong when the truth is simple. In her digital world, you were never a priority. And that's the part that starts eating at you in ways you don't admit out loud. You replay her messages, searching for clues that were never there, imagining meanings she never intended, convincing yourself that maybe you said something, maybe you misread something, maybe, just maybe, she'll message again tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and all you're left with is the same empty screen, the same unanswered thread, the same quiet that forces you to confront a truth you'd rather avoid. That's when you start lowering your standards without even noticing it. You begin matching with women who don't spark anything deep inside you, but they respond quickly, and at that moment, consistency feels like connection. You trade excitement for safety, alignment for convenience, and slowly you drift into a pattern that mirrors the one you fall into in real life. choosing the option that chooses you first, not the option you genuinely desire. And because you want to believe you're being fair, being open-minded, being mature, you convince yourself it's the right thing to do. You tell yourself chemistry can grow, that attraction can build, that maybe it's time to stop being so picky. But beneath those noble-sounding justifications is a quieter truth you don't want to name. You're settling. Not because the woman is wrong for you, but because you didn't choose her from a place of desire. You chose her from a place of fear. And fear always demands a price. Months pass, maybe a year, and the relationship becomes something you can predict with your eyes closed. Familiar, stable, even comfortable. But comfort can be deceptive. It softens the edges of your intuition, dulls your honesty, and makes you forget the truth you buried when you first said yes. You didn't choose her because she moved your soul. You chose her because she required nothing from you but availability. Then one afternoon, by complete accident, you cross paths with the kind of woman who once made your pulse jump. Maybe you see her at a cafe, standing in line with her hair tied back, or at an event laughing with her friends, or walking down the street with the kind of effortless presence that turns heads without trying. She meets your eyes for a split second, just long enough for something dormant inside you to flicker awake. And in that tiny moment, before you even have time to swallow the feeling, regret slips in like a whisper. Why didn't I go for someone like her? You tell yourself it's harmless, just a passing thought. But it isn't. It's a reminder of what you suppressed, ignored, or rationalized away. And that whisper grows louder with each year you stay in a relationship that doesn't reflect the man you want to be. Because no matter how stable your life looks from the outside, you can't hide from the quiet truth inside you. You compromised. You accepted less than what you wanted, not because you lacked options, but because you lacked courage. That's when bitterness begins to grow. Not towards women or dating apps, but towards yourself. Towards every moment you let fear make decisions on your behalf. Toward every time you mistook proximity for compatibility. Toward every moment you acted like being chosen was more important than choosing. Because the truth, the one you avoid, the one you postpone, the one you bury under excuses, is that the woman you truly want is almost never waiting behind a profile. She's living her life the same way you should be living yours. She's in real spaces, real moments, real experiences, places where your actual presence matters more than your filtered photos. She notices the man who shows up, not the man who scrolls, the man who initiates, not the man who hides behind maybe, the man who risks hearing no because he knows his worth is not measured by a single rejection. That's the part most handsome men never learn. Looks may get you noticed, but they don't get you chosen. Not by the women who matter, not by the woman who lights up something real inside you, because she isn't impressed by a jawline, a gym routine, or a well-lit selfie. She responds to confidence, to intention, to presence, to the energy of a man who acts like he knows what he brings to the table. And until you step out of the endless digital crowd and into the real world where your energy actually counts, you'll keep losing years, losing opportunities, losing the women who could have changed the entire trajectory of your life, because online dating doesn't reveal your value. It only shows how replaceable you appear when you let an app define your options. Somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that attractiveness makes everything easier. But it didn't. It only made the wrong things easier and the right things harder. You weren't blocked by your face, but by the patterns you repeated without questioning them. Patterns that kept you hesitant when you needed to be bold, passive when you needed to act, safe when you needed to be seen. The truth you must walk away with is simple. You don't lose women because you're not attractive enough. You lose them because you don't move like a man who recognizes his own worth. But the moment you shift your behavior, when you choose intentionally, act courageously, and show up in the real world with purpose, your entire experience changes. The woman you want doesn't need you to be flawless. She needs you to be present. She needs you to be bold enough to risk a no so you can earn a genuine yes. And if you're ready to become the kind of man who doesn't just get noticed but gets results, then step forward. Because the world isn't waiting for your perfection. It's waiting for your action.